It sits quietly on the shelf, a silent witness in millions of homes. Its cover is worn, the pages soft from use. You've seen it, maybe in your mother's house or your grandmother's. The Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care. The name itself feels like a promise. Safety, reassurance, the right way to parent. This book was more than a guide. It was a Bible for a generation. Parents trusted it completely, following its every word. It sold more copies than almost any other book in history, second only to the Bible. But every revolution has a cost. What if that freedom was an illusion? But icons cast long shadows. In those shadows, secrets fester. The book's influence was absolute, and its secrets would haunt generations. His name was Benjamin Spock, Dr. Spock. He didn't look like a revolutionary. Tall, gentle, with a kind face. A pediatrician from Yale, he was part of the establishment. That's what made him so dangerous. No one saw him coming. He was the perfect Trojan horse, carrying radical ideas in a package of respectability. Before Dr. Spock, parenting was a battlefield of discipline and distance. Experts told parents to let babies cry, to avoid spoiling with affection. Dr. Spock saw this fear and decided to burn it all down. You know more than you think you do. For millions, it was a revelation. The book sold 500,000 copies in 6 months. Dr. Spock became a fixture in American homes. But behind his calm face, a storm brewed. The man who taught America to raise its children was struggling to raise his own. Dr. Spock's revolution had begun. The seeds of change were sown. What made this book so shocking? One radical idea: listen to your child. Before Spock, children were objects to be molded by strict hands. Spock flipped that. Children were people, with needs and feelings to respect. He told parents to be flexible, to feed babies when hungry, to comfort them when they cried. In 1946, this was heresy. The old guard of child psychology, behaviorists, were furious. They accused Spock of promoting permissiveness, of raising a generation with no respect for authority. The battle lines were drawn: cold science versus Spock's warm, intuitive philosophy. The book changed the atmosphere at home. Suddenly, it was okay to hug your child, to play on the floor. The wall between parent and child began to melt. Spock gave parents permission to love openly, but also replaced old rules with his own. Parents, desperate for guidance, followed him just as blindly. They stopped listening to tradition, to their elders. Dr. Spock became the sole authority. A single man now held the hearts and minds of a generation. And that kind of power is always dangerous. The revolution felt liberating, but it came with risks. The new freedom had consequences no one could predict. The book's influence was total, and the cost of that influence was only beginning to show. The rules had changed, but the uncertainty had just begun. Parenting would never be the same. The advice seemed gentle. Hug your child, enjoy your baby. But woven into this comfort was a new kind of pressure. The old way was hard, but clear. Follow the schedule, let the baby cry. Now mothers had to be intuitive geniuses, guessing every need. The freedom Spock promised started to feel like a trap. One of his most controversial ideas: put babies to sleep on their stomachs. He argued it would prevent choking if they spit up. Parents followed his advice without question, trusting the expert. They had no idea of the hidden danger. Spock's philosophy seeped into discipline. He discouraged spanking, advocated reasoning and family meetings. On the surface, it sounded progressive, but it created confusion. Parents raised with firm boundaries struggled to implement softer methods. Children sensed the uncertainty and pushed limits. The line between parent and child blurred. The family dynamic shifted. Fathers were encouraged to nurture. Mothers became emotional centers. These new roles created new tensions. The book that was supposed to bring families closer sometimes pulled them apart. It created a modern anxiety, the fear of not being loving, flexible, or intuitive enough. Parenting felt more complicated than ever. The whispers of doubt echoed in the nursery. The Common Sense Guide was making parenting harder, not easier. The seeds of anxiety were sown, and the consequences would ripple for decades. The nursery was never truly quiet again. For years, the book was untouchable. Dr. Spock was a saint, but saints can fall. The first cracks appeared in the homes of those who followed his word. The Spock babies were growing up, and they were different. They questioned authority, challenged the status quo. The generation of the 1960s, protest, rebellion, was blamed on Dr. Spock. Critics, including religious leaders like Norman Vincent Peale, accused him of creating a generation of rebels. Suddenly, the beloved doctor was called a traitor. The man who built the modern family was now accused of destroying it. The attacks became personal, focusing on his political activism, his opposition to the Vietnam War, his protests, his arrests. Critics claimed he had intentionally created a generation of unpatriotic youths. The idea was terrifying. Could a baby book be a tool of subversion? But the most shocking secret was yet to come. His advice about stomach sleeping went unquestioned for decades. Then, in the 1980s and 90s, researchers found a strong link between stomach sleeping and sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. The advice meant to prevent choking was increasing the risk of unexplained death. The book that promised safety contained a hidden danger. The world had trusted Dr. Spock, and he had been wrong. The cracks in his legacy became impossible to ignore. The cost of blind trust was devastating. The revolution had a fatal flaw, and the consequences were irreversible. The book's authority was shattered, the myth was broken, and the reckoning had begun. The children of Spock, the baby boomers, came of age in the 1960s. Every act of rebellion, every protest, was blamed on Dr. Spock. His Ask Your Child philosophy was linked to the question authority mindset. The generation gap became a canyon, and Spock was blamed for digging it. He became the perfect scapegoat for a world in turmoil. Spock tried to defend his work, insisting he never advocated for a lack of discipline, but his words were lost in the noise. His anti-war stance made him a political target. The book was no longer about childcare, it was about the culture wars. The pressure was immense. Imagine being blamed for the actions of an entire generation. Spock was haunted by the accusations. Did his advice have monstrous, unintended consequences? The man who projected confidence was now filled with doubt. The revolution he started had spun out of control. The trial of the Spock generation was also the trial of Dr. Spock himself. The cost of influence was personal, the burden of blame was crushing, and the questions would never fully go away. The perfect family doctor did not have a perfect family. While Dr. Spock taught America about happy children, his own home was troubled. His wife Jane felt erased as his fame grew. His sons struggled under the pressure of being Spock's boys. The gentle voice in the book could be demanding and critical at home. The public persona and the private man were different people. The most tragic story, his grandson Peter, who suffered from schizophrenia and took his own life. Critics used this as proof that Spock's methods were destructive. The man who promised happiness for all children couldn't save his own family. These tragedies revealed the man behind the myth, flawed, human, and lost. His work was an attempt to fix something broken inside himself, but the problems of the heart are not so easily solved. In his later years, Dr. Spock tried to correct the record. He saw how his message had been twisted, how permissiveness had taken root. He added new sections, stressed the need for limits, but it was too late. The PSYDS controversy destroyed his medical reputation. The Back to Sleep campaign refuted his most famous advice. SIDS rates plummeted. A victory for public health, a devastating indictment of Spock. His personal life unraveled. Divorce, remarriage, alienation. He became a polarizing figure, no longer the nation's trusted authority. When he died in 1998, obituaries were divided, hero or villain. The man who wrote the book on common sense became one of the most debated figures of the century. The final mystery was the man himself. Was he a savior or a saboteur? The truth was buried with him. What is the legacy of this book? A legacy of contradiction. It freed millions from rigid parenting, introduced the idea that children deserve love and respect, but it also created a new dependency on the expert, on the book. Spock replaced one set of dogma with another. The book created the modern parenting industry, an endless market of advice and anxiety. The darkest secret isn't just bad advice or personal demons. It's about the nature of influence, how one idea can shape history in ways no one can predict. Dr. Spock wanted to start a conversation. He started a firestorm. He wanted to bring families closer. He was blamed for tearing them apart. The story of his book is a cautionary tale about the danger of simple answers to complex problems. Today, the book is a relic, but its ghost still haunts us. The questions Spock raised are still with us. How do we raise good children in a complicated world? Who do we trust? The Common Sense book of baby and child care didn't provide the final answers. It only revealed how deep and dark the questions truly are.